Did you listen a lot to Larry King and his interview style by chance when you were a younger broadcaster and getting your place in the business? Because I say this because, I'm not trying to, deter the conversation here, but your questions and your pacing and all that, the best I had ever heard in news was Larry King. I thought his interviewing style was great. And then I started listening to you religiously for, I don't know how many years you've been doing the radio show, and I thought this is even better than King because your personality is a little bit more warm, and Larry, of course, was more directed on news topics and serious matters. And I don't know, I see a parallel there, but I'm just curious to see if you had listened a lot to him when you were growing up and becoming the broadcaster that you are.
I would listen to Larry. He was doing overnights with his talk show, and I would
a mutual.
Yeah, and I was doing morning drive radio on a rock and roll station, and I would be coming in around 4:30, and then I would hear Larry usually about for 40 minutes or so. And what I always remembered was like the curiosity that you have. Anybody who interviews, be a good listener, but be curious and care about what somebody's answers are. That's really the most important things that I teach. I teach my broadcasting students, and Larry has been at the forefront of that for many, many, many decades. And there are a lot of people who are really good at it, but when people go, boy, you ask great questions, and I always say it's not a great question unless it solicits a great answer. That's what makes, for a great interview. And I always tell broadcasters, ask a question that's open-ended, get somebody talking back to you, because that's what people are tuning in to hear, not how great your question is. But thank you for that compliment. Who did you look up to when you wanted to be a play-by-play voice?
The first voice I remember when I was about 8, 9 years old was Facenda's on NFL Films. And then I, really listened to race. I grew up in Green Bay. My dad was with the Packers for almost 4 decades. And so living there, football was intense.
Ray Scott.
And Ray Scott, yes. And some other voices, like I'd go to bed at night and listen on WCFL in Chicago, Jim Durham doing the Bulls, and Joe Tate on 3WE do the Cavs. The two voices that I probably admire the most, aside from Facenda, Scott, and Summerall. Summerall's voice to me was great, and Don Criqui was Chuck Thompson out of Baltimore, and Jim Simpson at later ESPN, but initially at NBC.
Yeah.
And those were I would tape them on my cassette recorder when I was just a kid, and fall asleep with that playing underneath my pillow at night, and would listen to their cadence and their calls. And then as I was, just getting in the business when I was like 13, 14, I tried to mimic them. But I would use the array of voices. Like I'd spend 10 minutes trying to sound like Jim Simpson, and 10 minutes trying to sound like Chuck Thompson or Jim Durham or Pat Summerall. And I always tell kids that ask me about voice and presentation and delivery, I say, you need a roadmap. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. You need a roadmap. And what those voices and trying to sound like as you listen to all the different things, the tonality and how they move through a sentence and a call, is you kind of condition the muscles in your voice to kind of exude that. Then you get off on your own road and you sound like you're going to sound. But those are the voices I hear in my head. I hear Chuck Thompson, Simpson, Summerall, and Facenda. Those are the voices I listen to. When I leave my hotel room for CBS every morning, going out to the stadium for our Sunday broadcast, I'll play the John Facenda, "The Autumn Wind is a Raider," because I just feel like, first of all, I'm lucky enough to be in the NFL. I'm living a dream every time I step in an NFL broadcast booth. And I think about the appreciation I have for guys like him that probably sent many broadcasters into the business, listening to his delivery and voice and cadence and just what he meant really to kind of igniting the NFL and the majesty of it and everything else. So it's kind of like a little habit I get into, and it's something I've kind of stuck with every year I've been at CBS, and before that at Fox.